Hey everyone, welcome back. So far we had a look at string interpolation, property binding and event binding. Now in all those three forms of binding, data flow was unidirectional. So we were either binding to something, having data flow into something, or in the case of event binding, reacting to some changes, so having data flow out of our element of our DOM, of our template to us, so to say. But we always had only one direction. Now in Angular 1, as I said, two-way data binding was the default. So every third time we bound data, well, it was not only flowing into the target to which we bound, but if we change it there, it would be reflected in, let's say, the source where we initiated that binding. Now, while that was an advantage in a lot of cases, it also had a bit of disadvantages regarding speed and the debuggability of greater projects. Now, in Angular 2, we, as I said, have this one unidirectional data binding, but there is an exception. Two-way data binding still exists in a separate form, the fourth form of data binding, two-way data binding. Now, the input element here is a great example to use that two-way data binding. And a very easy way to demonstrate this is by, let me add two line breaks, by adding another input element here. And below that, I'll have another paragraph which says your name. Now, my name is by default Max here. I will leave it that way. But now I want to use two-way data binding to not only be able to reflect that name in my input element here, but also to change it so that it will also automatically update. So for example, here I want not only to see my name in the input element, but if I type, I want to see it change down here too. Obviously here I will quickly add string interpolation to name. Now to achieve this, we combine the property binding and the event binding syntax. So we use squared brackets and parentheses. And I think that is a very intuitive way, because when we were using squared brackets, we had data flow into something, and we were using parentheses when data was flowing out of something. Now combining that is, well, obviously two-way data binding. Now, two-way data binding, as I said, is not natively built in, so we can't enter whatever we want here. We can't enter value and then have it kind of two-way data bind. No, we have to use ngModel, which is the Angular 2 directive, which happens to be able to both input and output something. And it is this very specific ngModel that we're always using when we're doing two-way data binding in Angular 2. So here I want to bind to my name property, and then I just enter name here in the expression. So what happens here is this ngModel directive is able to both handle an input and an output of the same value, so to say, of the same property we're binding here in our example. And as I said, it has to be this ngModel directive. You can't use any other directive here or any other value, name, whatever. So as you can see, I now got my name here in the input field, even though I did not mess with any value property or add the value through string interpolation. And well, I got it here before. Now let's see what happens if I change this name here. As you can see, it updates in every place in the DOM or in this element here where I'm binding to it. So where I use any kind of string interpolation or property binding to this name property. It automatically updates if I change it here. And that is two-way data binding. That is really this all to it. And you're not going to use it all the time in Angular 2, but there are times and examples where it is really, really useful and where we will obviously then use it too. So now that have been the four forms of data binding: string interpolation, property binding, event binding, and two-way data binding. And with these four forms, we're able to manipulate our document the way we want. we're able to change properties of HTML elements, properties of directives, properties of components, react to events fired by elements, react to events fired by components of us. We will do this in one of the next videos. And use two-way data binding to change everything all the time. So that is data binding in Angular 2. Really powerful and, in my opinion, really intuitive with the way they change their syntax to reflect into which direction data is flowing, so that it is very easy to see what we're doing here and how data flows in this example. In the next video, we will have a look at a custom component we create, and where we will then use property binding to pass data into this component and change something there. See you there. Bye.